You're listening to episode 322 of The Secular Buddhist. Welcome to The Secular Buddhist. I'm Ted Meissner. The Secular Buddhist is the official podcast of the Secular Buddhist Association, a grassroots-driven effort to answer the needs of secular teaching and practice for contemporary society. The podcast has interviews and roundtable discussions pertaining to engaged Buddhist training and practice, and the SBA website has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Though the podcast focuses on core practices from a secular viewpoint, more traditional teachings are welcome and openly discussed. Kare Landfald joins us to speak about Zen coaching. Hi, everyone. Before we begin today's episode, I'd like to mention that this podcast and the supporting website, discussion forums, our live online practice circle, and other services provided by the Secular Buddhist Association are supported by you. If you find this episode or any other offerings helpful to you in some way, I ask that you take a moment and visit secularbuddhism.org and click on the contributions button. There are many ways you can help, which are listed on that page, and if you make a donation, it's tax deductible and helps ensure the SBA is able to continue the exploration of secular Buddhism. Thank you. We're glad to have you join us in the conversation. As secular Buddhism gains momentum, it is inevitable that the this world focus of secularity also find new engagements within the many branches of the Buddhist tree. Zen is no exception, and contemporary living can be a powerful tool in authentically showing up for your life. Kare Landfald is the founder of the Zen coaching approach, started in 2005. He was co-owner of Angsbaka Retreat Center from 2004 to 2006, and of Karlingasund Retreat Center from 2014 to 2018. He now lives in Oslo and travels extensively, offering trainings in Zen coaching, workshops, and coaching to individuals and organizations in many countries. So sit back, relax, and have a nice equanimity. Our guest today is Kare Landfald. Kare, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk a little bit about Zen coaching. And before we get started with that, I'd like to have you introduce yourself to the listeners and say a little bit about your background.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me in here. That's very nice. I would like to share with as many people as possible my passion, and which is Zen coaching, as I call it. So this is my own method or approach that I've been sharing and developing for the last 15, 16, or 20 years, depending on how I count. But you mentioned you come from a computer background, and that's what I do too, actually. Well, first of all, I'm from Norway. I live at the moment in Oslo. I work a lot in Sweden. I've been also living in Sweden several years. So it's a bit Scandinavian, Norway, Sweden. I'm very connected to both. And where to begin? I actually started my university studies with computer science when I was 20. So I have a degree from the Norwegian Institute of Technology, a master's degree in computer science. But already after a couple of years within that field, I realized I was more interested in the human mind and psyche and soul than machines and computers. So I was scratching my head how to fit my interest in more philosophy, psychology, spirituality into a study in computer science. So I found a way actually at the university to switch more towards management field. So I was studying organizational development, which is a lot about psychology and group processes and the human mind. And I wrote a master's thesis on the foundational elements of artificial intelligence research. So if you look at the foundational elements of AI research, then you see questions such as what is intelligence becomes very critical. You know, you have a whole field called artificial intelligence. So the obvious question is, well, if you want to make the artificial version, you should know what the real version is. So what is intelligence? Now, when I was diving into that, it became quite clear that every researcher in the field has a different view on that. So basically, I did a philosophy master's thesis at the Institute of Computer Science. And my professor didn't understand my thesis, so he sent it to a professor of philosophy at the University of Oslo. And I was lucky he liked it. I also studied philosophy at the University of Oslo a couple of years, or a year and a half. What to share? Actually, when I look back at my life, now I'm 56, there has always been this kind of introvert, introspective side of me from childhood, I feel. And there's been another side which is very adventurous. I want to experience everything. I wanted to explore the whole world. I wanted to travel everywhere. So these two sides have, I feel, been living together in me since childhood. And I think it was activated when I lived in the Philippines as a child for a year and a half with my family when I was around 9. I came from the suburbs outside Oslo, very safe, very middle class, very affluent in a way, not super affluent, like solid, safe, predictable, a good environment to grow up in, but also not giving a picture of how the world looks in its colorfulness. So when I moved to the Philippines as a kid with my family of 6, I have 2 brothers, a sister, it was a huge impression on my soul to live in Manila, to drive tuk-tuk around town, to eat bananas from our own garden, pineapples. People looked different, they spoke different, they acted differently, and the temperature was differently. We went to the beaches, we went snorkeling. So it really blew my mind open to the richness of the planet. And then the seed for traveling to learn about the planet was really, I think, planted at that time. So when I was 15, I went to the United States as an exchange student. So I spent my sophomore year in high school in first Indiana and then Detroit, Michigan for 1 year. That was a big step for me. I was alone. I had to live in a new family. I met many challenges and many joys, many adventures. It was both a difficult time, very difficult time, especially the first 3-4 months, hugely difficult. And the last 3-4-5 months, very satisfying, expansive. And then, when I came home, I continued, normal Norwegian high school. I also had this other side, which is very much into sports and nature. So I ended up going on a 1-year surf trip with a friend of mine before university. I spent a year in the military, which all of us had to do. I worked a year as a trainee in a research computer company. And I had all kinds of jobs. I also worked in the construction industry. I worked in the mental hospital. I worked with children in a kindergarten. I worked in what's it called? Picking strawberries, all kinds of jobs. And I feel each of these experiences really enriched my perspective on life. So my adventure side, actually, there was a special moment in my life. During my student years, I got a job as a student exchange job in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. So I was working at the computer department in Sao Paulo for a while, just exchange trainee kind of job. And this was a protected compound in a very dangerous city of 15 million people, complete opposite to Norway. And we were eating lunch in an outdoor cafe together, the staff there. And the teenagers from outside the compound climbed over the fence and came and begged the food off my plate every lunch. And there was something in me that reacted very strongly to this. I just felt, these guys are my brothers. How can they beg for food from my plate? And I have everything I need. I can travel the whole world. I'm a student. I have everything I need, and they have to beg food off my plate. Something is not right. It was like, I think this feeling of, I could just as well be the other person. This is me. And I decided I need to I don't want to be a successful management consultant for McKinsey and make loads of money and get rich just for me. This was one career path option I had, to find a job in a consultancy, management consultancy. I want to actually do something meaningful for the world and the fairness and the poverty and everything. But my education was philosophy, management, and computer science. But this strong decision, no, I want to go out to the third world. I want to live and work in the third world. I had such a firm decision that after I finished university, I did find a job. It took me like 1 year to actually get the job, and I found it. I got it for the United Nations in Pakistan. So I ended up spending 2 years in Pakistan. Also at the headquarters in Vienna, and then I worked in Vietnam. And after that, I was consulting in international development. I worked in Cambodia. Then I got a job in Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I was working on World Bank issues and United Nations reform. So I did this for 8 years. And then I felt quite depressed, actually. I felt, yes, I'm doing good work in a way. I have a good career. I travel the world. I make good money. I seemingly do something good for the planet. But I didn't feel I did anything good for the planet. I felt I was part of a big dysfunctional machine, international bureaucracy. And my heart, my introspective, philosophical, deeper meaning side was not happy. So basically, I quit my career in my mid-30s, or 36, maybe 7. And I went to a Zen monastery in France and spent a lot of 2 years there. And after that, I moved to a meditation center, personal growth center in Sweden. And I spent the next 4 years there. So I had a transition period, several years, where I was studying with many different teachers. I was living in communities. I was working, volunteering in communities. I was practicing meditation. I was doing spiritual therapy. I was very inspired by a lot of great teachers that I met from the Osho world, from the Buddhist world, nonviolent communication, Marshall Rosenberg, and many others. Also continued with the Zen practice. And out of that, I also started teaching and offering sessions, and started developing this coaching method I call Zen coaching. In the beginning, it was very small, and then people liked it, so I continued, and it kept growing. So for the last 15 years now, I've been sharing this approach in many countries, and trained about 600 people from maybe 20 nationalities, 30 nationalities. We've built a community of people. I've also included many new teachings into the work. So I'm a bit of a synthesizer. I like to synthesize the best I find in other schools, in other teachings, in other practices. And I like to present it in such a way that it becomes easily understandable, has depth, and is practically useful. So I would say that's the specific quality that I'm looking for And it's amazing, the feedback and the transformations that happen. And also finding a way to not just help individuals, but help individuals help many other individuals. So by training 600 people, who again each reach 100 or 500 people, it's possible to reach thousands and thousands of people with these quite amazing and very simple tools based in mindfulness, nonviolent communication, also the teachings of Almas, the Diamond Approach, the work of Osho, family constellations. It's all in there, but simplified and practical for in a coaching context. So,
which is a little bit different than what people typically going to a Buddhist center might encounter, because coaching is a different discipline.
exactly.
So it needs some adjustment there. So I'm curious. I want to take a brief step back. Is wondering what prompted you to start teaching? What was it that prompted you to start putting this process together?
Yeah, it's a question I've been considering quite a bit, because actually, when I look back on my life, one of my biggest fears in life was to sit in front of a group of people and speak. From I was a teenager, I found this quite terrifying. I was in a way quite shy, quite introverted in many ways. And to expose myself and speak about something important to me in front of people was a terrifying thing. And it didn't go away, this terror, actually. I had it with me until my 30s. I noticed it when I was about 14, 15. And it was very much with me. At the same time, there was something in me that put me in this situation again and again and again and again. So I'm quite fascinated that I ended up loving it so much, actually. So I feel where we have our fear is quite often where we have our gift also. And there was like this inner growth impulse and this joy of teaching, actually, the joy of facilitation, the joy of teaching. It's like I never sat down and asked myself, what should I do? Should I do this or that? Well, teaching could be fun. It's more like I was a Boy Scout when I was 13, 14, and I ended up leading a small Boy Scouts group, or meetings at least. That was my first facilitation job, you can say, like once a week, or we had a meeting and I had to plan it. It just happened because nobody else in that group did it. So I just said, okay, I can do it. And so this has happened all through my life. I end up doing it, and there's a love of sharing, and there's a love of the creative process, and there's a love of the space that's created. And there's also a recognition how much I learn from teaching. So I tell my students I'm doing this for mainly selfish reasons, because I learn so much from it. I grow so much from it. It's a side effect that you guys benefit from this. And it's quite true, actually.
Yeah.
And I also tell people, if you want to be a coach, do it primarily for your own growth. Don't be a messiah who's going to rescue the world. Don't have that as your primary intention. Have it as your meditation practice, as your growth practice, and the benefit is more like a side effect. That puts you in a more humble, more human position than to be, I know everything and I'm the expert and I'm already complete and enlightened. So I just see it as a wonderful way to keep learning and growing. The moment you're going to teach something, you realize how well you know it or how poorly you know it.
Right.
It forces you to study properly.
Yeah. And I like the way you characterize this, that in that interest in growing for yourself, that requires a humility and a willingness to be changed by what you learn from the participants in the programs, for example.
Exactly.
And so many times, I'm sure you've observed this as well, teachers who really do climb up that mountain seat and sit on it on high, rather than being with other people in and in co-exploration of whatever it is that the topic may be. So
and that's actually the beauty of coaching, because a coach is not an expert. A coach is actually more like a curious child. So Coaching is a partnership between two equals. So not being a therapist, not being an expert, just being a friend who has some good questions up the sleeve, I like this sense of equality and mutual learning and fun that happens.
So let's talk about Zen coaching itself. If you're describing this to someone who has no familiarity with this that you've created, what does it look like when it happens? What's there?
I was sitting in the car today and I was thinking, there are so many things to talk about. What could I mention in this talk today? And then I thought it might be good to share what I call the 5 foundational principles of Zen coaching, because it gives a feeling of what it's about. So maybe I can mention those.
Yep, perfect.
The first one is supporting people in connecting more deeply with themselves. So the intention of this style of coaching is not so much fix your external life to get what you want. It's more like a recognition that every serious problem we have in life actually has its root cause in a disconnection from ourselves. So if that's true, it means reconnecting with a deeper space in myself will solve every problem in my life. It may not change the situation, but you will look at the situation very differently. So the purpose of the whole thing is to help people reconnect to a deeper space inside. So it's an inward looking approach. So I would ask, what's happening inside of you when you talk about this? What do you feel? What's going on in your body? This kind of question. I'm not like, what do you want to create and how can you create it? That's more like traditional action performance coaching. The second thing is what I call helping through non-helping. It's a little bit what I mentioned before. If I come with the intention to help you, I put myself above you a little bit. But if I come with the intention to meet with you and enjoy this meeting for both of us and co-create something which will be of benefit to you and just explore the moment together because we can, because it's fun, because it's interesting to meet the richness of life. So I don't come, the moment I sit down with a client, I am not actually trying to help this person. I'm there to enjoy this person, to meet this person, to explore the moment together with this person. And the side effect is it does lead to some kind of what we would call help. So that's the paradox. By not trying to help, I become helpful. The moment I try to help, I become less helpful.
It's interesting, Kare, as you mentioned this in my in-person community group on Monday nights, we're just going to start unpacking and distinguishing between fixing and helping.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to, we'll spend several weeks on that topic. So for those who are listening are like, oh, but why is helping, not so good, or why is fixing bad? This is quite a rich topic to explore all on its own.
Very rich. Since I worked 8 years in international development collaboration, where one big aspect is rich countries helping poorer countries through money, I see the dysfunctionality of giving. It creates all kinds of funny dynamics globally because there builds up a resentment at the receiving end of this. So for me, fixing and helping is a little bit the same category. Fixing is just a stronger version of helping. So that's why I invite my students to step out of the whole idea of helping or fixing, both, into a different intention, which I call the adventure of now. To be in the adventure of now with another human being is satisfying in itself. So when I'm not sitting with a client, then I have the label coach. The moment I sit with a client, I have no label coach or even Zen or any label. I'm just here because this is interesting. Of course, it's a huge topic.
Yep.
And it takes a long time to grasp this because there's many inherent paradoxes there. But it's very important. So I spend a lot of time in that topic in my trainings, actually constantly. The third principle is what I call listening from inner spaciousness. So coaching is a lot about asking good questions and listening. So we explore listening. What is listening? And listening from inner spaciousness means I have no opinions. It's shunyata, it's space, it's mindfulness, it's presence, it's openness. You can give it many names. But it is this, I'm just an open space for the other person to speak into. Now, of course, that's a practice of meditation. So in order to listen like that, you have to be in a state of presence. You have to be disidentified from your mind. You have to disengage your thinking, etc. So it becomes a meditation practice to listen to people in this way. So call that listening from inner spaciousness. You have to be in touch with the deeper, your true self or your essence or your presence to do that. So it's a beautiful practice. So I often say to my students, what better job can you have if you're interested in spirituality, personal growth, meditation, than to sit in meditation with your clients day in and day out, have fun, and get paid for it? So you're getting paid for your meditation practice. You can live on it while benefiting people as a side effect. And that's actually how it feels most of the time. Not every time, but often. So that was the third. The fourth is what I call following the thread or empathic attunement. So it's the unfoldment through empathy. So since the present moment is not a static thing, but an unfoldment, if I'm really with you, I'm not just space. I'm a space which is following your thread. So I'm actually tuning into where are you in this moment? Now, since the moment is dynamic, next moment you're somewhere else. So I'm following the unfolding thread, which is in a way the life force in you. And by following your thread through empathic attunement, magic happens. I'm not guiding you, actually. I'm following you. So that's the core. I'm following you, not guiding you according to my agenda. And it's not even your agenda. So you could say it's basically process coaching. The whole thing is mostly process coaching. And the last principle, it's basically skillful means. Once you get those other 4 points, you can do whatever. You can use all your therapeutic tools and techniques and management tools and psychological techniques. And so I would say to my client, do you want to try something? I have this technique we can try out. Or I can break all my rules. Like I say, don't give advice, don't talk about yourself. Just listen, ask questions. But I can break all my own rules as long as I'm grounded in those 4 other principles. So it's very open. Zen coaching is not defined by its methods. It's defined by the spirit of listening and unfoldment.
So based on that and having worked with this now for many years, what have you found most useful about this in your own life?
Everything I love, everything I understand about the deeper meaning and significance of being human, I include. So there is in a way no separation between life and what I offer in terms of my work. For me, like most humans, I've struggled a fair bit with my own mind, with, for instance, judgmental anger. For years, I was stuck in different judgments that were like looping in my mind. I had romantic breakups which created like neurosis for like 2 years of spinning mind and incomplete dialogues in my head and like suffering from the effect of my own looping mind, which I could not stop. And the emotions that come with all those uncompleted frustrations. So this was one part of my motivation for entering spiritual path was I recognized I need some healing because I have a problem up here, which affects my whole quality of life. But I was also curious. So I think there's this double motivation to free myself of suffering, but also this genuine childlike curiosity. I mean, this is a magical place. How can we be here? How can anything be here? It's like a mystery. Every moment is a mystery. So in my own life, I would say gradually the mystery part becomes more bigger, and the healing part becomes less significant. It's like I still have my emotional, mental things coming. It's like I don't take it so seriously. Okay, now it's painful here. Now I'm angry with somebody. It's like the space to hold these things is bigger. The trust in life is bigger. The curiosity and the taste of magic and mystery is bigger. The conviction I can deal with pain without. It's okay. It's okay to have pain. It's okay to have heartache. It's okay to be angry. Everything is okay. It's okay to have my dysfunctional habits even. No, it's like I'm more okay. I also understand the inner critic more. I think this is a very important aspect of a spiritual journey, especially in the West. Maybe a difference between East and West. The intensity of the inner critic in the West, like this inner self-judgmental voice. I have a much clearer understanding of how this operates and why. So I'm not such a victim of this self-criticalness. And also the spirit of co-creation, of living every day as a field of possible creativity. Instead of living in a conclusion, oh, it's like this or it's like that, living in the question. Okay, it's like this, so how can I deal with it? What can I create? What will I choose? What else is possible? And finally, I would say the importance of community, of creating a group of friends and circles who are living in the same kind of passion. Because I spent like 10, 15 years with my philosophy books alone, without really any community, any Sangha, people around me. I didn't know these communities existed. I had nobody who were part of such communities. So I was 36 before I discovered the power and beauty of Sangha, actually. So now I so much value to develop and nourish and have friends on the path and build community and have community and be part of it and also help create communities.
So, in working with the people that you're coaching over the years, you've probably run into some challenges that they typically have that come up. And I'm wondering what some of those might be. What are some of the difficulties that people you're coaching are running into themselves?
It's so many different things, but of course, an area which is of very great importance for most people is intimate relationship. It's where people are often the most invested, have the most passion, and also the most joy and the most pain. I just come from a 2-day workshop with an organization that a community, they live together, they work together, they have their whole life together. And they had many conflicts that they hadn't spoken about. So I was sitting with them for 2 days, group coaching, how to clear the unspoken conflicts in these circles that have been there for a year, 2 years, haven't been spoken about, haven't been resolved. So at the end of 2 days, most of the issues were cleared. So I would say, what are the main issues? Well, at least, I don't know if it's the main issue, but at least relationship issues. Why is it so difficult to relate, with my partner, with my kids, with my wife, with my husband? What does it take? And generally, my conclusion from working with people for 20 years is that we human beings generally have very poor communication skills when it comes to important matters of the heart. We can speak about politics and simple things, but when it comes to talk about challenging things together, we are so conditioned to use a kind of language that closes doors instead of opens them. It is so difficult for us to come from vulnerability. We are so defended when we speak about difficult things. So, and even if we don't want to, the language we use is so full of demands and criticism that it's so hard for the other person to receive it. So I find this is maybe one of the biggest issues that people come with. And it can also be at work, with their boss, with their colleagues. Mm-hmm. And then I help them connect with themselves first. And I use this question, well, what do you long for? So this is one of those questions I always ask. Okay, I hear you have this difficulty. So what is it you really long for? Really, what is your heart's longing here? And most people, they don't know. They don't know what they long for. They just know the surface. So one of the biggest gifts a coach of any school can give is help people clarify their deeper longing, or you can call it their deeper intention, or you can call it their deeper desire, heart's desire, or deeper motivation, or deeper value. In business, maybe we call it value. But it's really, the heart is always longing for things like peace, connection, truth, creativity, power, joy, gratitude. But we live in a culture that denies these things. We're not used to speaking because it opens a vulnerable field. So we stay, and you asked me what's the benefit of me from this journey. And this is one of the big benefits, is the ability now to go from the surface level to the deeper level fast. Because I have the questions, like this amazing question. If you really understand it, what do you really long for here? What's your deeper needs? So I help people identify those and not mix them up with strategies, what we do in life. But what do we hope this will give us?
I think that's an important takeaway for people who are listening to the podcast is that question. What is the longing? I'm wondering if there might be some other practical things you'd like to share with the listeners that they might try on their own.
So this question, what do you long for? And then taking it to the depth by using the question, because normally you get a surface answer. What do you long for? Well, I long for less work to do, I long to have more space in my calendar. And then I would say, well, what would that give you? Then you get another answer. And then you ask, okay, what would that give you? So to take that question to the depth. So that's one important thing. The other tool that I teach, and which has really changed people's lives, which I'd like to share because it's such a value, especially for meditators. Because if you're in any kind of meditation practice, you will learn that the key is to allow your experience. You sit with something, a feeling comes, the thought comes, and instead of fighting with it, you simply allow it. You're mindful with it, you see it, you watch it, you feel it. You don't try to judge it or kick it out or fix it or change. That's meditation. You stay with it. So people who have been practicing meditation, they have learned that they should allow their experience. Now, this becomes a bit of a trap because you get a feeling coming, like you feel rejected by your beloved, and you have a lot of tension. It's very difficult to stay with this kind of feeling of rejection, one of the most difficult things to stay with. But then you remember, I'm supposed to be able to stay with this feeling, but I'm not. So then you start judging yourself. That's your spiritual superego, which is a nasty, dangerous character. I should be able to allow it, but I can't. Now you're more stuck. So the meditators can get more stuck than normal people or non-meditating people, because non-meditating people, if they don't like it, they don't like it. That's it. But I'm supposed to accept it. So what I help people see is allowance is not to be able to allow every feeling, but to allow the moment and to see this difference. Because I have this feeling of contraction around feeling rejected. I notice I'm rejecting this feeling of rejection. And then I ask, can I allow this no I have? Can I say yes to my no? So basically the tool is like this. What's happening in you right now? If I ask my client, oh, I feel tense and contracted. Okay, can you allow that feeling? And my client says, no, I don't want to allow this feeling. Then I say, okay, can you allow your no? Can you say yes to your no? And then the client goes, oh, no, I can't, because I should allow it. So it's a meditating client who thinks they should allow it. Okay, so you're rejecting the no to your rejection. Can you allow that? This one I can allow. So basically, we find where is the yes, because a yes is hiding someplace. So we don't try to make a yes happen, we find it. So it's a non-doing. It's like, there must be a yes. And the moment we find a yes, without trying to create it, the space opens up. Yeah. So can you allow it? No. Can you allow the no to it? Yes. Okay. So this is something I've taught to thousands of people. And for many, especially the meditators, it's such a relief. Okay. Instead of rejecting my rejection of my feeling, I simply allow my rejection of my feeling. It seems obvious when I talk about it, but actually it's a huge key. So that's one thing.
I'm wondering, is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
Okay, I want to share one tool, because I like practical tools that can be applied in daily life. Actually, I've shared many of these tools on a website I call dokodang.com. These are freely available on this website. One tool is very helpful because you can remember it by using your 5 fingers. So I call it the hand tool. So it's a way to make your daily life meditation practice. So you don't need to set aside extra time. So you just look at your hand and you take one finger, the thumb, and you ask yourself, stop. The thumb reminds you to stop. Stop for a moment. Stop. Okay, thumb, stop. Then the next finger, notice. And notice, especially inside the body, emotions. Notice. And the third finger, allow. Allow this experience. And if the experience is a no, then allow the no. So stop, notice, allow. The fourth finger, fully experience. This is also a danger of meditators who practice vipassana witnessing. If you misinterpret that, you can become too much the watcher and too little feeling what you're watching. So I see this as a possible trap. So that's why the fourth finger is fully dive into it. Not just watch from the side of the swimming pool, but jump into the swimming pool with consciousness. So fully feel it. If you're angry in your body, fully feel the anger, 100% with consciousness. And the fifth finger is include space. So you don't get completely caught up in the experience. You also allow infinite space. So stop, notice, allow, fully experience, and include space. For me, that practice can take us very far. And it's easy because you can just put it on your hand and you have it. Stop, notice, allow, fully experience, and space. So each of these elements, of course, I could speak for a day or two or more about. But yeah, that's a very practical tool that can be explored in detail, of course.
Okay, thank you. Well, for those who are listening, I will have a link to zen-coaching.com if you want to check that out for more information. And our guest today, Kare Landfald, thank you so much for being here. Good speaking with you.
Thank you to you.
for listening. If you'd like to hear more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the SBA website at secularbuddhism.org, and you'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. Discussion about this episode can be found on the episode page itself, along with show notes. Sound editing, mixing, and mastering provided by the generosity of Anthony Dominello of StructureFromSound.com. The music for The Secular Buddhist is used by permission from John Kaizen Neptune's CD, Steps in Time. Additional music is provided courtesy of Monty Levinson of Taihei Shakuhachi and Rodrigo Rodriguez. Their websites are linked on the SBA site on the About Podcast Music page. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on The Secular Buddhist.